Ok.
Então vá. Ainda boa tarde para toda a gente. Boa tarde, pessoal. Então, estamos aqui em mais um webinar, o último de maio, aqui no canal da Starter, em conjunto com o Clube UI. Hoje estou aqui com a Madalena. Ela já se vai apresentar daqui a pouco. Só queria, antes disso, dar aqui alguns recados importantes. Normalmente damos sempre no início destes eventos online. Portanto, vai ser 1 hora. Madalena, queres fazer inglês? Então? Ou queres...
Quer dizer, podes apresentar-me em português, está tudo bem.
Temos também de trocar para inglês.
Ok.
Vamos então trocar o coisinho. Bom. And so this webinar today is 1 hour, around 15 minutes talk, and then we'll keep the final 5-10 minutes for a Q&A. Some of the questions we already have from your, when you signed up for the webinar. We have a bunch of questions here, but if you have questions and you're here today and you want to ask the questions right now during the conversation or at the end of the conversation, please feel free to do so in Portuguese or in English, whatever. Madalena will present in English, we'll talk in English, but at the end, if needed, we can answer some things in Portuguese, okay? There's also in the video description, on this webinar description, at the bottom, you will see several links and about the starter, about the community, where you can find the next events, the next 3 online events that we'll have here. The next one will be in June, early June. We'll have, I think, 3 webinars in June about accessibility, about design systems, and about, I don't remember the other topic. I think it's 2 about design systems. I don't remember. All of the information is in the description, and several other links about scholarships and courses, etc. And that's kind of it. Madalena, I'm going to put your slides here, and can present yourself and start the presentation.
Okay, thank you, Miguel. So welcome, everyone. Thank you for being here today. I want to start with a question, and I genuinely want you to think about it just for a second before I keep talking. So when was the last time a product surprised you, like really surprised you? It didn't crash, or it wasn't super confusing to use, but actually it kind of surprised you but in a good way, because basically where it did something useful that you didn't explicitly ask to do, right? So if you are struggling to think of one, and that's kind of the point, because for most of the history of digital products have been fundamentally reactive, right? You click something, like a button, for example, it responds to what you clicked. You fill a form, like the form you filled for this webinar, it saves it, and the machine waits basically for you to tell what to do. But, and this is a big but, that is changing, and very fast, as we have been noticing for a couple of years, 3-4 years. So today, we are going to talk about what change means for us as designers, researchers, founders, as the people basically who decide how humans and software and products relate to each other. So my name is Madalena, and I want to do a quick intro of myself before we dive in. I'm a product designer that focuses on AI native products. I've spent the last few years working at the intersection of autonomous systems and user experience, which basically is a fancy way of saying I think a lot about what happens when software starts making decisions on your behalf. And I also worked with teams building agents across enterprises, consumers, and basically developer tools. But the question that keeps coming up to me is basically one that I want to also respond during this session, which is when an AI can act and basically not just reply to you, how do we design for that? How can we have that logic in order to create an experience that actually gives something useful to the people using it? That's basically where the answer is. And let me tell you why this question matters so much right now. So Gardner published findings recently that stopped basically a lot of people, because by 2026, so we are in 2026, basically they say that 40% of enterprise software applications will embed some form of AI agent. But let that sink in your mind, because it's not an AI feature. It's basically not a suggestion even. It's not even like the autocompletes like sometimes we have on Notion, for example. It's agents, software that perceives context, makes decisions, and takes actions across different products. And we are talking about 40%, it's 40% of what we have. That's not a niche trend. That's basically something that we are creating together. That's not something that your team can wait on, or at least needs to start thinking of. And this is the main event. And most product teams, most even design teams, are not ready for it, because the toolings that we are seeing are moving too fast, and tools are not strategies, as we know, and we need to have strategies in order to have these products work for our users. The capabilities have moved pretty fast, and the UX thinking hasn't kept up, or at least it's taking a bit of time, which is quite normal because this is new for everyone, right? In a certain way, in the certain nucleus, let's say it like this. But that gap is where things go wrong. Something that I would like to share with you today is that a deeper problem, basically. So for 40 years or more even, we've been optimizing UX for human input. Every principle we know, like the affordances, the feedback loops, the error prevention, or even the progressive disclosure, was designed around this screen, this assumption that humans are in control. Like I was saying previously, the human clicks in a button, for example, or the form that we talked, the human decides, a human sees the result and then reacts. But that assumption now, I wouldn't say wrong, but it's not the ideal for the scenarios that we are trying to create. Because when an agent acts on your behalf, when it drafts, when it creates schedules, when it purchases, when it commits, where contacts someone, for example, the human isn't in the loop at every step. Which means that every UX principle we've built on our careers on needs to be rethought. Because rethought, we shouldn't leave anything that we learn, because we are always thinking of the user as a center. But we also need to rethink how this would work for this new scenario. Because I know that this is a big claim, so let me be specific about what I mean. Let's talk about the why this is happening right now, and why this here and this moment. And the timeline here matters a lot. In 2022, ChatGPT launched, and the world discovered that language models could have a conversation. That was like the whoa moment. Everyone was like, wow, amazing. Still in the fence some, but amazing. But it was fundamentally a chat interface. You prompt it responds, very familiar, great. In 2023, agents became a reality. It started to become a reality. Tools started chaining actions, like LLMs started calling APIs, browsing the web, running code. The capability was there, but it was very fragile, expensive, very expensive. It still is a bit expensive in some sorts, but let's see it. And mostly in the developer ends. In 2024, agents hit the production, like Copilot became something real. The Cursor, for example, Linear AI, Notion, AI, Perplexity. Agents stopped being like this kind of prototypes and became features millions of people use daily. And that's when UX problems started becoming a reality, and it became the scaling and scaling and scaling. Users didn't trust these outputs and started to think like, I don't want to intervene, I don't know how to intervene. Basically, they didn't understand what the agent was doing and why it was doing. But last year, 2025, and now 2026, we are at a moment where UX is starting to catch up in a certain way because we had a bit of time to do it, and the capability curve is very steep. So the design curve becomes flat, but that's why this room exists today. And that's why this conversation is important, it's urgent, and we need to start having it. Today, we'll cover six topics, and here's basically what it is. I will leave it to it. It's pretty self-explanatory, but at the end, we'll have a Q&A to ask a few questions. I know we already have a few on the form, but please feel free to drop some questions in the chat as we go, because like this, I can start seeing it as well and be prepared. All right, but let's start building the foundation. What is Agentic UX? Agentic UX, and let's define it in terms, okay? So Agentic UX is a practice of designing interfaces for AI systems that can perceive context, make decisions, and take actions, like I've been saying so far. But this is with or without explicit human instruction at each step. And we need to take this in consideration also because of the frictions and everything, but I will talk more about it in a few minutes. But the key word here is action. A chatbot will reply, will respond. An agent will act. And that is the line. When an agent acts in this world, when it sends an email, modifies a file, places an order, or even like triggers a workflow, for example, that we created in one of the million tools that we have like now, like 10 make, whatever you want, the stakes of that action become a reality. And the errors will start building up a lot. And some of them are irreversible when they happen. And there's a lot of examples in the industry right now where there was no way to reverse certain errors. And this is also important for us to think about. But unlike traditional UX, where a user who makes a mistake just clicks it back, an agent's mistake may have already propagated somewhere you can't easily undo. And you see the problem here. There's a lot of things that we need to think about in order to make sure that we have a way to help the users use our tool. So Agentic UX is not just AI, UX, or AX with a new label. It's a distinction between the design challenges that we are having. And it requires us to have, to show to our users trust, transparency, and even like the examples I've been saying, like the human control, in ways that the traditional product designer has never had to really go into because there was nothing acting like that. But Hizu, and I'm sorry if I don't say it correctly, but I think it's Hizu that we say, who has done some of the most, I think, more important writing or even thoughtful writing on AI product design. I really advise you to take a look. Put it is this way, and I'm going to paraphrase it because I think it captures perfectly what I'm trying to say, these changes. So the Agentic UX is when the system can observe, decide, and execute without waiting for a user prompt. Basically, the interface is used to be where users did things. Now the interface is where users watch things happen and decide whether to let them or not. And there's like 3 different levels that I like to think here, like the high, medium, and low. But yes, again, we'll talk about it a bit later. And that's the entire problem statement in basically one sentence. It summarizes it perfectly. The interface is basically no longer the control surface, it's the observation interface. And most of our design thinking is built around control interfaces. The reframe that we have to have, or what this whole session will be about, is basically what I've been trying to tell you. But let's go a bit deeper. Here's a good analogy I use a lot because it makes a difference because it's obvious. A traditional product interface is like a vending machine. You press a button, something specific and predictable happens. And here, the machine doesn't make decisions. It doesn't interpret your intent. It basically just executes. And if the wrong thing comes out, you know exactly why. You press the wrong button. Contrary to the one on the right, which is an agentic system, which is like a sous chef. You say, I have dinner party Saturday. It will be around 8 people. At least 2 are vegan. And the sous chef goes off and does the thing, like it's doing the thing. It checks what's the fridge. It decides on a menu. It starts making a plate, all without asking you at each step. Remember those movies where we get this interaction, like you say to the house, please, this is going to be the dinner, please make sure that this is done by 8 p.m. I don't know, an example. Yeah, they're a bit murderous, but let's hope that doesn't happen to us. But that is where the value is, and that's why it's faster and smarter. Today, I saw something and I would like to share with you guys about exactly this. We shouldn't be afraid of knowledge. We are in control of our actions, and we should take that in consideration and take that when we are doing what we're doing. But knowledge is something that we should always strive to have. And that really clicked with me because I love to have knowledge and share knowledge. And basically, this is something that we need to understand. But here's the thing. You want to be able to look into the kitchen and see what is happening. So you want to know if the sous chef is making something, you'd veto. Like you can even have like a tablet. Now there's some fridge with a tablet where you can have them do things there. So something like that. But basically you want a way to stop. So this tablet could be a way of doing this before it goes into the oven, for example. And the sous chef model is pretty much very powerful, but it requires a completely different relationship between you and the system. You and the system, and also, of course, the person that is building, need to have this consideration. And this relationship is basically where we are, where we design. Now, I want to go a bit deeper even and give you a framework for thinking about where an agentic feature sits on the spectrum of autonomy. This is because not all agents are the same, and the design requirements change dramatically depending on the level. So level 1, as we are seeing, is suggests. So the AI recommends, for example, text, while the human types everything. Think autocomplete, Grammarly, inline suggestions, for example. And the human here is fully in control. It's something pretty simple. The agent's role is basically advisory only. Design, for example, how we can think about it, this is as a design challenge, for example, is relevance and when to actually show the suggestions without being too intrusive. And that is the key. Remember, relevance, what is the relevance of having these recommendations, and when to actually show the recommendations. Where is the on point? The level 2 is like the proposes. So the AI suggests next steps and the human clicks to execute. We can see that in different, like Claude, we can see, for example, on Claude, or even like GitHub Copilot. I don't know if you ever used, but it generates a function and you still have to accept this function. The design challenge here is, for example, making proposals easy to evaluate, accept, or reject quickly. We need to think of these 3 in order to have this good experience. The level 3 is executes. So the AI runs tasks automatically or autonomously within predefined word rails that you gave. It takes action, but only within a bounded scope, basically, that you defined. Think an agent that can send emails, but only to people already in your contacts, or only people that you vetted, or an email that sends it to your to someone at a certain hour. Basically, design will go into like, or does a review, for example. Let's imagine you have a podcast and you want to find guests, and you ask it to do a table on Notion with the people, the emails, everything you need, and to match that to to the template of the emails that you like to send, and with something that is personalized to that person. That's another example of what we can do, but this is more orchestrates than actually executes. But yeah, the design challenge here will be to make the guardrails visible and the actions reviewable. But the orchestrated, like I was giving the example, the AI will delegate to other agents and synthesize results. And this is where the multi-agent systems are live. And here, our challenge would be to make collective behavior legible. Users need to understand what the network that we are creating of agents did, not just output that we gave. They need to understand this in order to continue. The level 5 is autonomous, like fully autonomous. The human only reviews the outcome. Basically, sometimes doesn't even see the outcome because it's doing on the background. But they can also review it, of course, but only after everything is done. Think like the algorithms trading or self-healing infrastructures, for example. So the challenge here would be like the audit trails. It will be the anomaly detection. It will be the clear escalation paths for when things wrong. You need to know what you should do right away when things go wrong. That's very important. But there are two targets or two audiences that I want to check. But let's do a quick check on who in this room is for, because I want to be specific about how this applies to your work. If you're a designer building products that have artificial intelligence, your job has fundamentally changed, right? You are no longer just designing the happy path when a user does a thing and gets a result. You are designing for delegation. What does the user see while the agent or while the agents work? What do you see when it fails? How much does the user trust it? And how do you earn that trust over time? If you are a product manager, a PM, the decisions you make about autonomy, the autonomy level, are about what the agent can and can't do without approval. Basically, now the design decisions with direct UX consequences, like that scope conversation you're having in sprinting planning. It's basically, I consider this like a trust conversation. You should be having it with your designer in the room. PMs should have designers in the room to make sure that the user is there and that you see everything, because the PMs have already a lot to do. But you need this for it. The Asian application, like I was saying, serves like these two audiences. So the human who sets the goal and monitors the outcome and executes multiple step workflows and interacts with external systems, basically. So we now have a mental model. We know that agents act. The interface helps users stay oriented and in control. And autonomy levels need to match where we are. But there's a specific design problem that sits underneath all of this. A problem that makes agentic products fail when the AI is technically excellent. And the problem is trust. Not trust in the abstract way, but the concrete moment-to-moment experience. And for that, we need to understand other concepts that I will share. But before we do that, I want to share an example, or I want to pause for a minute. Sorry, I want to pause for a minute, and I want you to know what you're actually dealing with. These are 3 questions on the screen that you can ask, and there's examples of what it is. But think about it for a little bit about which one is most relevant to you right now. And if you have, drop an answer. If not, just write it for yourself, but make sure you have it. What's the most confusing agent or interaction you have experienced as a user? What's something that surprised you? What's your current relationship with AI in your daily work? In two sense, in you designing for the product, tools that you're using as well. I think it's important for us to have these examples as well of how you're using these tools. And also, what scares you the most about AI acting on your behalf? Where is this problem? Is not knowing what AI actually is basically you're afraid that it makes mistakes, it doesn't give the value that you're looking for, you cannot find a way for it to give you the output you're in need, it replies wrong. There's a lot of things that we can go. But these right here are the right problems that we need to think. And what I've been hearing a lot is it's consistency, right? With what I see across teams and the conversations that I've been having. But yeah, let's take this into consideration and look into something more specific. Let's go to Waze. So Waze, everybody has used Waze, or at least knows about Waze, or even Google Maps. They're both from Google, but the navigation is a bit different. But you get in a car, you say, take me to this address. And then Waze starts making decision on your behalf. It reroutes you when there's traffic. It tells you to take a road you've never been on. It makes a call to save you like 10 minutes. I don't know. It depends. Waze is something that it's working. And I want you to think about why. Because it has every element we are going to talk about today. It tells you what it's doing in real time. Rerouting your route saves 7 minutes. It tells you why. Heavy traffic ahead on ECID 19. It gives you a way to reject it. You can set like the original route. It takes you to your preferred route. And when it makes a mistake, when it sends you to the wrong entrance, it recovers, make a U-turn when possible. And it also tells you what do you see? You see something on the road, you can talk with it, And basically it has everything. It has visibility, explanation, override, recovery. It has all of this. Every agentic product needs them. And we'll come in this and with more detail in a bit. But first, let's make sure that we are clear on why an agent is different from a chatbot. Let's go. This analogy is pretty interesting. So let's imagine this like this. I found this for explaining the difference between a chatbot. Don't take it literally, but the chatbot and an agent to someone who hasn't thought about it before. So you have a chatbot, it's like a GPS direction, let's say leaves. It gives you the information, it tells you where to turn, but you still have hands-on the wheel. You make every decision, you can ignore it entirely, and it just recalculates. The GPS doesn't actually care, it doesn't act. An agent, on the other hand, is like a car that can touch the steering wheel, like Tesla. They're contrary, so it should be like the maps. It should be on the. Sorry, I made a mistake. The maps should be on the left, and the Tesla should be on the right. But let's ignore that and make sure that we get it. But basically, like a car that has steering wheel, it can actually make things happen. And even the San Francisco cars that taxis and wherever that you don't have anyone driving on front, you're in the back. That's another good example. But basically, it's the ability to change course, to take an action in the world. If you see there's traffic, it stops the car. If you see that it's moving, it moves, blah, blah, blah. Basically, it didn't need something explicit for you or to ask something explicit from you in that moment, because it assessed the situation and analyzed the situation and decided to act. That change from giving the information to taking action is this fundamental design challenge that we are talking about. Because when products and softwares can touch the steering wheel, the stakes of every design decision go up enormously. And here is the tension that sits at the heart of agentic design. I call it too smart, too stubborn dilemma. If the agent's too cautious, if it asks for permission every step, if it shows every micro decision, if it checks in constantly, it's annoying. It's slower than doing it yourself. Have you ever felt like, oh, this is not what I wanted. I'm losing my time. They say that it should take less time, but it's taking more time. It doesn't feel like AI at all. Users abandon it. And that's what we need to think. That's the design problem that we are looking for. Imagine you go to a restaurant and there's a good waiter. You sit down, the waiter doesn't ask you to specific your order at the molecular level, and they take your general request. Like, right, I'm in the mood for something like maybe, let's say, fish. And they make a recommendation, they bring it, they check it, they adjust. But here's what a good waiter never does. They never take your plate away while you're still eating. They never bring dessert without asking. They never substitute your entry without telling you. Well, sometimes. A good waiter is autonomous in their execution, but disparate about their actions. They're doing lots of your doing. You see what they're doing. You coordinate with the kitchen, manage the time, but nothing will affect you directly if you see it. Right? And that's exactly the behavior we want for agents. Autonomous execution for boring stuff. That waiter instinct is knowing where to show or when or what to do and how to handle what to handle actually in silence. Now let's talk about what it means concretely. Here's the question, and we need to think about how do you let humans feel safe when systems can act independently? That's the bar. And it's design bar, not an AI bar. So the answer to are humans safe comes down to two things: visibility and approval. Visibility means that the user can see what the agent is doing, why it's doing, and what it's doing it about. Approvals means that they are explicit checkpoints for consequential actions, and not in every action. And these two things, visibility and approvals, are the foundation. Everything else, like the interruption handling, something that you also need to see in order to pause, to show, and to say yes or no. But let's talk about the interface needs to show, because the interface needs to show this, what the agent is doing, not like the loading thing, the spinner, a real specific human readable status, analyzing your 6 months of expenses. Why it choose that specific action? This is like the reasoning layer. The ability to override, basically, always. No agent should feel like a locked door. It should have some way to override it. It's not a failure mode. It's a feature. And the ability to recover when something goes wrong, because something will go wrong. And the agents are not like foolproof as we have been knowing. What can the user do right now to fix this? That is a question you should be asking. But let's go to the 4 pillars of agentic design. The first pillar is status communication. The agent always tells you what it's doing. This sounds obvious. It's not obvious in practice. Most agentic interfaces I've seen do one of those 2 things. They show nothing. The agent just works in the background and you wait. Or they show a generic spinner that tells you nothing useful, just processing. This is not a status communication. Good status communication answers 3 questions. What is the agent doing right now? What step is it on? What comes next? Analyzing the document, step 2 of 4. Next, generating the summary. Oof, I'm in control. I know what is happening. I can stop it if I need it. The design principle here, legitimacy, not transparency. You don't have to show every API call. You don't. You just have to show enough that the user stays oriented. And the cost of getting this wrong? Well, users interrupt agents unnecessarily because they don't know if they're stuck. And they will be frustrated and they will spend money they didn't want to spend and they won't want to use your product anymore. They turn off the agentic features entirely and go back doing it manually. Yeah, like let's look at Google Nest. Google Nest is one of my favorite examples to show designers who are new to this space because it's something most people have actually experienced and it does progressively autonomy almost perfectly. So here's the scenario. When you first step up to a Nest thermometer, it asks you questions. What temperature do you like at night? When do you leave at work? And then this is like the Cree transition. It starts making suggestions rather than just waiting for instructions. Should I adjust to 68 degrees at 10 p.m.? Because you always do it. It's not asking for permission. It's asking I'm here. It's proposing something. It's like a specific action based on what he's learned. And you say yes or no. You're still in control, but the agent is starting to take initiative. Then, once you've confirmed a few of other suggestions, it starts acting quietly on its own. Basically, you open the app and you see adjust to 68 at 10:02 based on your weekday schedule. The action happened, but it's not invisible. You've seen what happened. You've seen that it changed it automatically, right? It's one step closer. It asks, suggests, acts quietly, and always shows and allows for override. It's a pattern you can apply to almost any agentic feature you'll ever design, even though this one doesn't have, this specific that I'm showing here doesn't have a visual, but now you have ones with visuals. Part 2 or pillar 2 is the intent explainability and the explainability. The agent can tell you why it did what it did. This is like the different from status, because status is real time. It tells you what is happening now. Intent explainability is retrospective. It tells you why the agent made the decision it made. This matters in 2 situations. First, when the agent does something surprising. If the agent chooses a different approach than the user expected, they need to be able to answer to why and get a real answer. Not the AI decided this. What is that? Second, you need to, when the user basically needs to build this trust over time, early on, users will want to understand the agent's reasoning for most decisions. As they are learning to trust it, they'll stop asking. But the ability to ask has to be there. And the answer has to be genuinely useful. You can't push back on something you don't understand. Microsoft Copilot, for example, several things well on intent explainability. And it's worth studying. You should study this because it's one of the highest volume agentic products in the world right now. When Copilot drafts an email for you, it cites what it's used. Based on our last 3 messages in this thread, that one line does a huge amount of trust building work, it right in context, like the usual, what happens usually when you're using this tool. And this is just an example, but Copilot is a good one for this. You know what informed its output. You know where it came, this information. And if the draft is wrong, you know immediately why it is wrong because you go and see it and you know what to fix. It's not a full reasoning trace. It's the minimum necessary to orient the user. And that's the sweet spots on where you want to be. For example, let's go deeper into the Copilot for a moment. So when it launched, the biggest user complaint wasn't about the accuracy. It was about the confidence that they were having with the tool. The agent felt overconfident. It would generate a response with no editing, no sourcing, no here's where it comes from. Users who didn't know better trusted it completely. Users who did know better, did not trust it, did not use it at all. Microsoft design response was layered. They added citations, they added confidence signals, languages say I think versus I know, I think versus I know. Like UX writing, you need to think about this on UX writing. And they built a check sources flow. And critically, they made it easy to reject and generate. Basically, this is a good example. You have on the right the Copilot with the conversations that you can be talking, like show meeting notes, what is happening. Then here you have like this is everything. You have the video, you have where if you click on the meeting note, where it was, etc., etc. Great experience, amazing experience. But design challenge or where you need to think, how did the user know what Copilot did? What if summary misrepresented something? What if the email went wrong for the wrong person? As I showed you before, as I told you before in the last 2 slides, you need to think about it. And Copilot did it. The third one is override and interruptibility, and the user can always stop or redirect the agent. You need to be able to override this mechanism. And this is not like only the stop button. It's a signal to the user that they are still in charge. that the agent is working for them and basically not around them or in the back. And these three designs please or override. Like the first one is like the visibility. The pause or stop control should never be buried. It should be on screen whenever the agent is active. Number two, and the second one, is no penalty rejection. No penalty rejection. Number three is like the redirect. Basically, you need to know how to stop everything, override everything. It stopped because this specific thing and try this instead. Design for redirection. You did this wrong. I give you this suggestion because I did this wrong. The Sneak is a good example. It's like this. It's a security tool and has one of the best, in my opinion, implementations of override in developers tooling. When Sneak's agent starts automatically fixing vulnerabilities in your code base, it doesn't just go off and do it silently. It shows you. It actually shows you and gives you opportunity to go back, to pre-file, to prefix, and lets you bail out at any point without corrupting the state of your repo. Great. What's well designed there is granularly like control over it. You need to have this granularity of control. You don't have to approve or reject the whole batch. You can say yes to this easy fix and no to the ones you can handle yourself. That granularity, those steps, those different scenarios, those different steps makes the feature much more useful because it actually tells the user that it doesn't need to feel that they don't have to feel that they don't trust the tool and the whole system at once. They can trust it piece by piece, step by step. The pillar one is error recovery. When the agent fails, it fails gracefully. Agents will fail. Take that into they will. The design question isn't how do we prevent failure? It's what does the user experience when failures happen? You need to think, not how do you prevent failure, what does the system, the UX, the experience that you're creating, the adaptability experience, the AX, whatever you want to call it, when failures happens. Bad agentic error recovery looks like, for example, an agentic error message, no explanation of what went wrong, no path forward, and a confusing state when the user doesn't know if partially work was done or none of it was. And that is devastating for trust. That will break trust. One experience like that and users stop delegating important things. That error state is a trust opportunity. This is a simple way that you can build up that trust that is important, and I will share more in a few minutes. Agents in the loop, or linear. Linear. I'm a few steps up. Linear is like the project management tool, and this is a great example for what I was saying. When linear completes the tasks, it says trying to auto-assign this issue, but the team's assignment rules have changed. It doesn't just drop an error. It tells you why it's not able to do that. It explains what it's trying to do, what specifically blocked it, and it offers 3 concrete steps. So retry with updated info, modify the request, or handle it automatically. And you can also talk with it. These are like the 3 different option patterns. You have the retry, the modify, and the takeover. It's something I really recommend if you're building this. And it should be based on the design templates that we have. But let's go hand in hand to the agentic loop. So you get the mission, the agent receives a goal from the user. It scans the scene, the agent observes the environment. It thinks it through, the agent reasons. And then it takes an action. The agent does something in the world. It does something on the screen. It does something on what is happening in front of the user, like sending a message or updates a record or calls an API, And then the last one, or not the last one because it's a loop, but the 5th one is it learns and it gets better in order to keep personalizing, customizing, and giving more to the user. The agent here it updates their understanding, their database, on what actually happened. Did the action work? Did it not work? Why did it work? What did it bring back? This is what enables the system to improve over time. And it's also where memory and personalization comes from. And this loop starts again. What I love about it is that this diagram, it reframes what we are designing. We are not designing a screen. We are designing the logic behind. We are designing a cycle that runs continuously in this loop, often without users watching. This is basically what I was saying about something that they don't need to know. But our job here is to make sure that this cycle is legible, trustworthy, and interruptible at any point. And this is very important. What good AX, Agentic UX looks like. So the trust layer, the status indicator, agents display like the current actions, ensuring that the users stay informed about ongoing processes. Then you go to the intent summary, which is the agents provide like the explanations for actions taken, like fostering user understanding and trust. Basically, this is the why layer. I can call it like the why layer. It's written in plain language, like this there. There's no misunderstanding. And then the history log, which is, trust me, it's very important to have. Users can review past actions without options to undo if needed, with options to undo if needed. They need to be able to see this to see if it was a software problem or if it was a user problem, what the user problem was, and how they can go back or not. History log is very important. But all of these are important and shouldn't be replaced. They shouldn't replace each other. They should be working simultaneously. Basically, like the status is live, the intent is contextual, and the history is persistent. And notice that all the fourth elements or everything is like the element is, it's basically implied but not shown here because the control surface is not. It's like the undo button, And then the override control, which is also very important, and you have to think in consideration. These are like the two sides of the same coin, like the trust layer and the override control. They're like the same coin, basically. They're both heads, let's say it like this. So intent here is like the agent shows its intent plan and waits for a proceed or edit signal before acting. Basically, here you have the pre-check or the pre-action checkpoints. For high-stake actions, you design a moment like to pause. Here's what I'm about to do. Go ahead. Yes? No? The autonomy is where users define specific what the agent should operate. Control, users should be able to interrupt, correct, or stop the behavior with a signal. And the reversibility, as we've been talking a little bit about it, users should be able to revert unexpected outcomes. I know I'm like saying this a lot, but it's very important. It will save you a lot of problems in the long run, trust me. But think about this, like roll back this agent session rather than Control Z. This is an example I like to give, but the last one is transparency. So the user should be able to use override controls even if they don't understand what happened. This is very critical. Don't make transparency a prerequisite for control. If something feels wrong, the user should be able to stop it even before they understand why it is wrong. I'm not feeling safe using this. Let's imagine I'm the user. I don't feel safe using this. I don't think they are replying to what I want. I think they're going to do something that I don't want. They're going to touch something that I don't want, like delete email. I don't know. Please revert story, And these 5 dimensions together define what a real control, screen, surface, whatever you want to call it, looks like in agentic systems. Multi-agentics, agents, UX, everything, If you're designing like this, great. The confidence indicators. Now, we are going to talk about one of the most under-designed elements in agentic systems, which is the confidence signals. And most AI products either pretend to be certain about something, like ChatGPT. I did an example with ChatGPT where I asked it. I said something like, "Hey, Mario, how are you?" And he said, "My name is not Mario." And I said, like, "Yeah, your name is Mario." And from that conversation on, his name was Mario. So ChatGPT is Mario now. Ouch. But basically, this is just a small thing. It doesn't in the long run. But this is very dishonest and dangerous. This can be like, which can be meaningless in certain way or for certain users, but neither extreme work. And here's what to do. you have all of these 5 examples. Visual meters, you show right next the AI predictions or classification. Here are predictions and classification, like a simple bar or color signals, and we know a lot about color and their importance, right? That tells the user that this is one of the agent is very sure about, and this is one of the agent that is like you might double check it, like inline and not like buried in something that shouldn't be there, you know? And then you have reasoning. You show the agent's logic with the intent preview and step-by-step thinking, not like the raw model of output, you know, a curated human readable explanation of how the agent got this conclusion. And then you have the action. Define when it's considered high confidence, that I said in the beginning, if you paid attention, that I said I was going to share. You have high confidence, you have medium, and you have low confidence, you know? So low confidence is the one that you want to do 100% manual. Medium is you want a suggestion, but you don't want them, you know? High confidence, or contrary, sorry, low confidence is the one that they should not touch, like something to do with money, for example. Medium confidence is something that they can suggest and I can ask and I can do, you know, like agent proposes something, you know? And then a high confidence is the agent is acting completely automatically, and it knows that that's the way to do it. These are like the design thresholds that it's very explicit. And then the rationale is like when it provides a written reasoning for a specific action, like a sentence, or for example, I flag this transaction because it's 3 times your usual amount at this merchant. Like, let's say it took me 3 times from Fnac, something like that. I don't know, but in a good example. Another one, or the next one, the last one, is overrides and rollbacks. So going back to what it was, like we've been sharing, the user should be able to undo something and go back. One tap, it should be something to take into consideration. It should be accessible. This is what turns like the confidence signals from information into action. The user can act on their disagreement immediately. Again, very important. The big insight here is that confidence indicators are not just about honesty. They are the mechanism that we are creating, and through the users that developed from the appropriate trust. We are creating trust. We are using these 3 last slides that I shared to build this trust. Show confidence well, and users will rely on the agent for the right things. Hide it, and you get either blind trust or blanket skepticism. And trust me, there's more skepticism than trust in some of the tools. And both, but even though both will be failure or design failure, and we don't want that. But you can apply this 4 pillars to your own product. So I want you to think of one agentic feature in a product you're currently working on or one you use regularly. And ask these 3 questions. Does the user know what the agent is doing all the times? Can the user find out why the agent made a specific decision? And can they stop it at any point without penalty? Yes, no, maybe? If the answer is no, you're just identifying your most important design depth. So make sure to think about these 3. Name one feature, which of the 4 pillars is weakness in the feature, and which one is specific change you could make in the next sprint. If you want to do this after and then send me a message to go back and forth with, because everyone that signed on the form will receive the presentation. So let me know if you want to then talk about it more in depth about it. But think about everything that we share right now and add it in multi-agent systems, which I already gave it a few hints, but I'll just summarize it, excuse me. So multi-agent systems are exactly what they sound like. Multi-AI agents working together to complete the task. An orchestrator agent that plans and delegates, like specialist sub-agents that handle like specific parts of the work, outputs get merged back. The architecture is very powerful, you know? For example, a research task that one agent would take like 20 minutes to complete can be done in 4 if 4 agents work in parallel on design, on different aspects. An example that I like to do from a project that I did is about like traveling. You have different types of traveling. You have the main one that is working with all of the other ones, like the main orchestrated one. And this one is making sure that it goes step by step. So first you decide where you want to go, or based on a form, the user suggests something, or based on your previous travels, it suggests something, then it suggests something. You give a number, like say, I want to only spend like 1K for this travel. It tells you, okay, based on what you've been seeing, blah, 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 let's do this one, let me book. And it's booking everything, every step, it's accepting and booking. And you can see what is happening until you get to the last point, which is you receive on your email, you receive in your phone, wherever you decided, right? And on where you're seeing, like on the platform that this is happening, you see exactly everything from your itinerary. You can even add like itinerary on the steps. If you ever went to one of my talks, you know, I talk a lot about this example, which is one of those that I can share. But from a UX perspective, it creates like this compounding transparency, you know, like problem. Because if one agent is hard to explain to user, 4 agents working simultaneously is potential 4 times harder. How do you show the user what's happening when the happening is actually being distributed across multiple processes with their own reasoning if they are working in parallel, right? The design challenge is exactly that. The user sees or experiences a single interface, but the work is being done by a system they can't see. How do you maintain trust in that situation? A good example of the AI personalized or AI personal assistant is like Gemini Copilot or Microsoft 365, or some of the newer, even like the productivity agents. They are the most like consumer-facing example of multi-agents systems right now. When you say schedule a meeting with Sarah next week and send her the prep materials, you've kicked off a multi-agent task. One sub-agent is handle calendar access, one email, and one might handle document retrieval. The user sees none of that complexity. They just see a done state. And that's fine for simple tasks. But when it comes to something that is very much complex, when the meeting was scheduled at the wrong time or the wrong version of the document was sent, the user has no idea which part of the system to blame or what happened. The lack of transparency that's featured in a happy path becomes like a liability in the error case. So you need to take everything that we shared above in consideration. And here the design lesson is that multi-agents need even more deliberate to states communication, remember that we share at the scenes at the beginning, where agents hand off to each other, where merging happens, where the work is resembled, you know? That's where the things go wrong. And that's where the interface needs to be more explicit. A few UX patterns that we can think about. The first one is orchestrating the view, showing the user that multiple things are happening in parallel. The second one is like the highlight, making the handoff moments visible to the user. The third one is a single source of truth for status. Even if 5 agents are working, the user sees one status surface, like state on the screen, one summary updated regularly, not 5 separate status panels. That's overwhelming. It's basically one clear picture of overall progress. The last one is like the graceful partial completion. So in multi-agent systems, one sub-agent failing doesn't have to mean the whole task fails. The interface should be able to say 3 of 4 tasks are complete. The 4th needs your input, rather than presenting a catastrophic total failure, like everything is wrong, nothing is wrong, that will confuse the user and they don't want to use it. But we need to think about the risks and anti-patterns. So the biggest risk in agentic systems, agentic design, that will get you or product in trouble faster than anything else is automation bias. Automation bias is when users trust the agent's output without evaluating, because it came for AI or an AI. Like students, for example, that are studying exactly what the AI tells them because it looked confident telling them, because they're busy, or because the interface didn't give an easy way to push back. There's an example from a teacher that they were arguing with a student because the student was saying, "You are wrong, teacher. The AI told me this. The AI told me this was correct." And they basically hit the teacher, and the teacher had to go to the hospital because the AI was right and it was wrong. But basically, they accept this output, they act on it, and sometimes very wrong, like the example, and it goes very, very wrong. And this is already happening a lot. This is just one of the examples. Basically, the design factors here are that we need to think about is increased automation bias is basically like the confident language that we know edging. Outputs that complete and polish even when they are uncertain. This exists, and social proof signals are very important. Your colleague accepted this recommendation, so maybe it's correct. The design factor that reduces it, basically. It's like the explicit confidence signals. See why link on every recommendation, for example. Why this happened? Go see more details about this. And framing this position, the agent has a collaborator and not authority, because it should be human in the loop, human on the loop, in and on the loop. Users should be there. Humans should be there. It's just a tool. It's not a strategy, and it's not human. And we should always take that into consideration. This should be used as a leverage. And just because others are not doing it, it doesn't mean that you shouldn't. Like I said in the example, knowledge is something that we should always strive to have. What we do with the knowledge, that says more about what is happening and what is not happening. We have the ability to stop it and not do it. The frameworks and takeaways. So the last one, agentic design principles. Let me consolidate everything we've covered into 6 principles or 5 principles, 4 principles, wherever it is. Like, you make the loop legible, you match autonomy at stakes, you design for failures first, you make rejection effortless, you show reasoning, and earn autonomy progressively. And this is something that we need to take into consideration when we are doing, because we show the agents the state before making an action. We balance trust to progressive autonomy, and we do everything that I shared. But I wanted to share like a small checklist that you can do. Like, this is very small. This is just a thing that you can start with for now. But basically, it has the status, with transparency, it has explainability, override and control, error recovery, confidence, autonomy match. Basically, this is like what it is. What you need to ask at the end of the day is, if any of these boxes doesn't have a clear yes, there's where you should focus on. When failures happen, does the interface tell the user what failed, what was completed, or what to do next? Yes, no. You should take this in consideration. How do you know if something is wrong? You have this tree. Usage signals is override rate decreasing over time. That means users are trusting the agent to continue without stepping in. Trust signals are users clicking your explain this or see reasoning links. Early on, high click rates means they are learning. Over time, declining rate means they've built enough trust, don't need to check because they trust you. That's a good way to see the trust signal. That's basically what I like to call a healthy trajectory. It's not 100% doing anything with the tool because it's stressing it a lot. When it escalates, it basically goes like it's asking humans basically questions. The experience signals are users abandoning at agent decision points. Yes, no, that's a sign that the interface is creating anxiety instead of confidence, and we don't want that. And we shared a few examples of this, like the confusion signals, basically, and what to do with CSAT scores. Basically, you look like specific for agentic interactions, not the overall product satisfaction, but specifically the agent satisfaction. And these metrics don't require like custom tooling. Most of them are available in your existing analytics, like we have like Mixpanel, wherever you want to use. The only thing that changes is knowing where to look or what's looking for. And Greg Nodelsman work in UX magazine. I really advise you to look into it and learn a bit more. It has 4 core capability frameworks. Perception tracks inputs to determine intent. What can the agent sense? What signals does it process? Designers need to think about this like this. Does the user understand what the agent is paying attention to? Yes, no? Reasoning, like the prioritizing tasks and planning. This is where the reasoning is. You designers here need to think of, can the user see the plan before it executes? The memory, which I give you a bit highlights above, is like maintaining user preferences. What does it remember the system? What does it use that memory for? And what we need to think as designers is, can the user edit? Can the user see? Can the user correct what the agent has stored? And then agency, like executing tasks with human oversight. What can it actually do in this world? And designers need to think about like this: which actions need approval, which can proceed autonomously, and how is that communicated? You run any agent feature through these 4 questions before you design a single screen. The framework is like forcing you to function for having the right conversations with your team before even pixels hit the canvas with cursor or whatever you want to use, Claude design. But you pick one of these to do this week. I will leave this really quick here for you to see, because we are running out of time. I talk a lot, as I say to Miguel. But if you want to do any of these 3, feel free to do it. Message me after. Let's talk about it. This will be on YouTube also, so feel free to see it. Any of this will help you move the needle. It will have you give a next step. You can even create a blog post after about this to explain your logic and everything. But pick the one that fits your situation and commit to it right now. And I actually mean that. Decide before you close the window. Look into it. And of course, how do you bring this to your team? I think that's important to know. Basically, if a PM is with you and it asks, what's your current override rate? Are we measuring whether users trust the agent or just whether they use it? This is what you need to ask the PM. And that question is reframing the retention as a trust metric. It's harder to dismiss. For an engineer, for example, can we expose confidence levels in UI? And what does our error state actually look like right now? Start small. Important to start small with one signal, one failure, and that's sprint and not a quarter. Do it in that sprint. Start to show that you know what you're talking about, like this. And then leadership. Every agentic feature we ship without a trust layer is technical debt. Here's what it costs us in the support, churn, and liability. And we all know when we talk about cost, when we talk about churn, and we talk a lot about liability, put a number on it. It's very important. And an happy agent experience are more costly than an happy traditional UX. These mistakes will start to increase, basically. You don't have to bring this old framework. Bring the one conversation that's most relevant to where your team is right now, and it's stuck on right now. Where you need to go next, or where you can go next. And I'm finishing. So I want to just say something about Mark Weiser, who is considered one of the founding thinkers of human computer interaction. And it says something that it's coming back to, like, the most profound technologies are those that disappear. They weave themselves into the fabric of everyday life until they are indistinguishably from it. The best agentic systems will be invisible, and not because they are hiding, but because they work so well and communicate so clearly and earn trust so consistently that users don't stop thinking about them as technology and start thinking about something specific. And that is design work. And we are the people who know how to do it. This is an example of where you can see a good way or a good example of seeing, like the AI guidebook. You can also go here and see like the Anthropic's responsible scaling policy. I didn't talk responsible scaling, but please do. It's very important. And then to the end, where to go next. Read the Designing Human-Centric AI Experience if you like to read. It's a very good book. I have it somewhere in my little library. And then follow UX LX. Right now, the event already passed, but they share a lot of things. Brun Figuered is very nice, very good. and a very good person to follow also on LinkedIn. He shares a lot of great things. Ladies at UX, of course, from Lisbon, which I am from, and then Lisboa UX as well, UI Club UI as well, the starter as well. There's many more you can share, but I guess that if you came here, you already knew about Club UI and the starter. So yeah, but yeah, I want to open the Q&A open mic. Hope everyone is here, and we can see. Oh, see some messages. Oh, hello.
Let's see. Renato, a few minutes ago, in one of the slides, he asked what would be the best experience for the user to send a follow-up prompt for a prompt that is already in progress, and that the agent needs to be aware of before completing the task without stopping it.
What would you send a follow-up prompt for a prompt that is already in progress? There's different ways. And if I understood correctly, so there's one from like Lovable. You can I think you want me really not to stop, but there's an example for Lovable. There's other ways. I will share another example after, but Lovable does something where it shares, like, you send a prompt, and you can stop the queuing prompts that you have, basically, and you can reply to the prompt that it's doing and ask, like, hey, this and this, like, you give another prompt to it. This is an example, but something that you can do is, if you have like if you have an icon or three, but wherever it is, like a button inserted for this, is to add to the experience, add to the prompt that you share, add now to the prompt, something that it's visible and it can have add to experience. Basically, this is an example of what you can do. Two example, one that is like less, and then this one where you can add to it. I hope this answers. If not, feel free to message me as well. Happy to continue the conversation.
I have another couple more questions. One from Andresa.
Okay. Desculpa, pessoal, quis ler.
São perguntas longas.
What factors do you use to decide which type of assistance works best for a particular product? For example, chatbot inline. It really, 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 really depends on what you're doing. It's like a big answer for it, but let me see of an example. So if you're like a good example, if you're working for a travel agency and you want to implement agents to the experience of the user, there's different things you can do. You can add the planning of what you intend to do with the agents. Then you have an example of what will happen, and then from there you can have I'm like Claude does it very well. Multiple agents are working at the same time, like on the co-work, and you have each step, it tells you exactly what it's doing, and when there's an error, you can do it again, like click on the icon to redo it, to find the solution for that problem, but it continues doing the rest of the things because the error doesn't stop the rest of the comprehension of what is happening. There's another way, like it's explaining, like I said on the examples, if I'm the travel agent and I want to I'm in the step, where is the money? Hey, this is 1K. Are you flexible? Can you change something? It asks a question, and that can be in a chatbot and cannot be in the chatbot. Depends on the scenario. But this is very like a very broad example. If you want to send me a message with like a specific example, we can even talk. We can do like a 15-minute conversation as well about the subject. But yes, it's very broad. It really, 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 really depends on the specific scenarios. And basically what we need to take in consideration is what the product is, what we are trying to share with the user, what the user will be seeing and not seeing, and how will we give a solution to the user that doesn't overwhelm them and creates trust and builds on that over time. So yeah, I hope that answers it. Again, feel free to message me. I'm more than happy to continue the conversation.
And the final question here in chat is, I think, a bit more broad in terms of AI tools, almost like not necessarily just tools, but about the design process itself, where you think AI should be used in the design process.
Yeah. So in terms of product, that if you're thinking about like tools that you use versus what you're building, I think here is more tools that you're using as designers, right? I think so. I'm gonna go with that. If not, let me know and I can answer with the other one. But I think that AI should be, it really depends on the team and the product, because I've been talking with different teams and different teams are doing different things. Like there's a lot of steps that they're doing, like for documentation with Claude, and Claude does the documentation, but also changes on the design system. And from the design system, the designer just has to make sure that everything is working. This is an example. But how you need to go from this is, first of all, what are you using in your company right now? And what can you switch now? Because if you have a design system 100% on Adobe XD, for example, if you have it on Adobe XD and you're trying to use an AI tool, it's going to be very hard. It's going to take a lot of time, and that will block you. So you shouldn't add AI right now to that design process. You should add to the rest that you can. For example, if you can add something to research, you're one team designer and you need to do all the process in less time because you now have AI. How can you leverage this? How can you leverage on research? How can you use, for example, the name is missing. From Google.
Notebook LM?
Notebook LM, thank you. Yeah, Notebook LM. I just did an episode on it and I didn't know the name. But yeah, for example, Notebook LM. So my advice to you is to see which points on the design process you have friction right now, which ones are a priority and not a priority, and which ones can you tackle right now versus not. Because it depends also on the amount of work you have on yourself right now. It really, really depends. But something simple to add is just having Claude, for example, as someone like a collaborator for you to go with your thoughts if you're alone in a team. If you're not, something that I like to suggest for teams is to have so if you are a team of 5 or 6, to have each month one person presenting some tool that from AI that they started to implement on the product. So every other 5 people are working on normal things of the product, and one person is doing the hard work to present how the others can also do the work after it did. Can be a month, can be 2 months, depending on the sprint. But that's an example I like to give. And you're the one suggesting because you're the one that knows better your team. Yeah. Hope. Again, you can send me a message as well if you want.
I'll maybe just get one question or two from the sign-up form. A lot of them you probably already answered. Okay. Some of them, well, there's a lot of questions here. Some people just came here to learn, which is great. There's a couple of them that I lost them.
If you are curious more about this, because this was just like the surface level of everything that I've been sharing, like there's a lot of things, like each slide, there's more depth inside of it. This is just like the surface level of everything. So if you are curious about any of the steps, any of the frameworks, any of the logic, anything that I shared, feel free to message me as well. We are looking to see if this is something that you're interested in. So yes. Queres ler tu ou ler? No.
You can kind of answer in Portuguese or in English if you want.
I can do both.
It's a bit more broad. I picked it up because it's
okay. Qual o futuro do UX se no futuro não for a utilizadora a desenhar as tarefas machine Agentic AI, se não necessário interface de todo? I'm going to translate. So in the future, if UX doesn't need the user anymore, do we actually just design tools for Agentic AI? Will it be necessary screens? So this is actually very interesting and something that I'm working with a company from Germany, with a company with a conference from Germany about agent to agent work and when you need interfaces and when you don't. So it really depends on what's the scope of what the user needs to see versus what it doesn't need to see. If you're building a product that works agent to agent, and we can think about multiple things, it's completely different scenario, and that will happen. It's already happening in some places. You already seen this happening, agents to agents talking with each other, and we don't have anything. Like, for example, if we see the car, like I was saying on CF, yes, you have it on your phone, but you don't touch you don't touch anything on the interface of the car, and they are communicating with each other, and you don't really need the interface itself. You can just talk with it, for example, and just say, book me. Now I don't think it's still possible, but it will for sure be possible in the future. And what you need to think about here, if it's you talking, yes, but if it's related, for example, it's connected to your Google Calendar, that's also interface. There's many things. There's like a lot of things that you will see. But if a company, there's agents right now that are actually doing the opposite. So they are working and building on trading, for example, alone, and you don't need an interface. But yeah, there's a lot of things, and this will be the future for sure in some sense. I hope it's not like the whole future. Eu espero que não seja o futuro todo. Agora vou tentar explicar em português também, porque a minha pergunta foi em português. Mas, basicamente, sem dúvida que o futuro vai envolver este tipo de cenários em que o agente está a falar com o agente. Já esteve muito mais longe, já estão a construir nesse cenário e nós não vamos ver. Acho que nós gostamos de ter controle. Eu não disse isto em inglês, mas acho que é importante dizer. Nós gostamos de ter controle. Nós, quer seja as pessoas que estão a construir, quer seja o contrário. Então, como temos isso, vai sempre haver uma espécie de screen. Quer seja no back-office, quer seja o utilizador a ver. Quer seja uma casa que tu não vês a casa a falar contigo. Não tens o tablet que eu falei durante a apresentação. A casa só está a fazer as coisas e tu não estás a ver nada, só estás a ver a casa a fazer assim, mas não estás a ver nada nenhum screen, não tens nada, só falas. Sem dúvida. E eu neste momento nem sequer estou a pensar nas outras probabilidades todas, sabes? Mas pronto, eu vou partilhar depois quando tiver isso lançado no meu LinkedIn, portanto, se depois quiseres ver mais sobre isso. E mais detalhe e até exemplos um bocado assustadores do que é que dizem que vai acontecer no futuro em relação a isso. Assustadores e não assustadores porque é novidade, não assustadores porque nos vai fazer mal. Again. Yeah. Força.
Acho que é isso. Vamos então encerrar. As pessoas que se inscreveram vão receber depois um e-mail com certificado. Se não receberam, provavelmente está no spam. Também é bom verificar isso antes, primeiro. Madalena, muito obrigado. E é isso. No e-mail vai também está lá o teu LinkedIn. Depois também partilhamos os slides e alguns links que tu também queiras também indicar e deixamos lá tudo e assim as pessoas podem pesquisar e explorar à vontade e aprofundar um bocadinho nestes temas, tá bom? Pessoal, muito obrigado. Dia 3 estamos cá outra vez para um webinar de acessibilidade no Figma. E é isso.
Okay.
Boa noite. Madalena, se quiseres despedir também.
Tchau, boa noite. Qualquer coisa à vontade.
Então vá, pessoal. Boa noite. Até